So hello, my name's Matt. I'm the youth coordinator with Thrive Matsu. Today we've got Sylvia and Jordan who are going to be leading our street team members through some training. And so take it away, Jordan.
Great. So today we're going to be continuing our series on evaluation, and today we're going to be talking about prioritizing interests and exploring methods. So to get started, some of the outcomes of interest for Thrive Matsu are listed here, including youth are engaged in productive and constructive ways, youth strengths are recognized, utilized, and enhanced. There are opportunities for youth in the community fosters positive relationships for youth. There are supports for youth to build on leadership strengths. Youth have access to opportunities and environments where they can find and grow their strengths, and youth have opportunities for positive social connections. And what we're gonna wanna do is have you guys pick about 3 and narrow it down to 3 that you wanna really focus on and really work on figuring out like how well they're doing on that. So a couple different we're going to go through a sample of a couple different evaluation methods, starting with focus groups, moving into interviews, and then we're going to focus pretty heavily on surveys because that's our expertise and also one of the ways that we really recommend for you guys. So focus groups are kind of what they sound like. It's a small group of people to answer questions and discuss ideas that arise from the group. And generally it's kind of just like a facilitated discussion. So our tips for group facilitators are, opening the meeting with brief introductions, introducing the purpose and setting some ground rules. So ground rules might be something like, don't interrupt each other, let's try and be kind and respectful, like different things that you would typically set for groups like that. Ask questions and facilitate the process. Finding out what questions you're asking is the most exciting part of focus groups and analyzing the results. I find it all very fun. And then keep the discussion moving forward. So don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions and really like dig into something. If somebody seems like they've partially answered a question but doesn't seem complete of a thought, feel free to like pursue that. And then encourage everyone to participate, summarize key points and themes, and record what was said. And interviews are, exactly what they sound like, a method of asking an individual to answer questions in person or by telephone. When they're based on a list of questions prepared in advance, they gather in-depth information about activities or outcomes. We use interviews a lot in our work as part of just, figuring out different people's perspectives on how, a certain program or different group is doing. And our tips for this are to prepare a list of questions and leave time for spontaneous discussion. Listen carefully, for you're there to learn. Thank the person for his or her time. Or their time, take notes on important ideas during or after interviews, and organize your information, analyze your findings, and share with others. And there are several different ways to analyze findings, but we'll get into that more in the next section. So surveys, I'm sure we all are familiar with what surveys are. We've all taken a survey at one point, a SurveyMonkey, a Google Form survey, something like that. A survey is a method of gathering information from a number of people who respond to a series of questions about what they know, think, or feel. Many surveys are completed in writing, but some are completed by email, phone, or in person. And we're going to go through these tips for surveying in pretty heavy detail, so feel free to stop me, like if you have any questions or anything while I'm talking, okay? So define a clear, attainable goal. Luckily for you guys, we've already kind of outlined what some of the expectations are, and especially around outcomes. Like we want to figure out, 3 of those outcomes and how they're doing, right? So defining a clear, attainable goal is, the first step to making sure that you have a really clear survey. And keep personal questions for the end. We really recommend this. We generally do, when we're doing surveys and we do really big surveys, we keep demographics to the end. So like asking about race or ethnicity or asking about someone's income or something like that, that's pretty personal. We tend to keep those towards the end. Just because that way you give people time to like warm up to getting asked questions. And then, you know, towards the end, it doesn't come as necessarily a huge surprise when you're asking those things. Don't let the survey get too long. This is a really, really big deal, very important. You know, the longer that a survey is, the more likely that you're going to have people dropping off towards the end. And so definitely trying to keep it as short and sweet as possible really helps your response rate. And it also really helps to make sure that you're getting good, accurate information. Focus on closed-ended questions. So this is a really big one. You don't necessarily want to ask like one example of maybe a more open-ended question would be like, do you always brush your teeth in the morning? Like that might be not a good question versus maybe asking how frequently do you brush your teeth in the morning, and then having like a different responses for what that looks like. Like I brush my teeth in the morning 7 days a week consistently, or I do maybe 5 days a week, or I do maybe 3 days a week. That might be a better way to format the question. And definitely like closed-ended questions are just a way to make sure that you're really clear and that you're not confusing people, and also that you're getting like good, accurate information. Consider an incentive. This is definitely a good idea for you guys when you're asking your peers to do a survey. You might want to consider saying, well, you know, whoever fills out the survey gets invited to a pizza party or something, for example. We regularly do incentives for some of our surveys that includes like a drawing for like a gift card or something like that. So those are all, you know, options for what you could do for an incentive. Don't ask leading questions. This one's really important. Do you guys know what a leading question is? Can anyone give me an example of a leading question?
Like would, excuse me, would asking like, how good of a job are we doing? Would that be a leading question?
That's a really great example of a good leading question, Matt, because you're already implying that you're doing a good job. So it's already making this assumption. And so be sure that when you're asking questions that they're, you know, as unbiased as possible. And I know that that can be very challenging, but that is definitely a good recommendation for us. Keep your answer choices balanced. So what this means is that, you know, don't have just strongly agree, and like neutral. Like make sure that you're having strongly agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. Like make sure that your answer choices are balanced in that way. So that way you are, you know, not leading people towards having a certain opinion as much as possible. Another one is to avoid absolutes. That's kind of what I talked about earlier with the, do you always brush your teeth? This is a good example of that. It's like always, never, things like that are definitely good to avoid. Stay away from double barrel questions. So this is one where, you know, you might have a question where it asks, do you always brush your teeth and brush your hair in the morning? That would be an example of a double barrel question that you might not necessarily want to have, because that it's two pieces to a question where you really want to address those separate ones. So if you find yourself writing double barrel questions, definitely try and separate them into more than one question. And then most importantly, review the survey before sending it. We've had many a survey go out without reviews and have had, you know, things that needed to be edited. So it happens, but it's definitely avoidable with just a little bit more attention to detail and just quality assurance on that. So let's talk a little bit about building a survey. Have any of you built a survey before using like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey or anything like that? I know Matt has. I guarantee it. I bet Sylvia has too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So building a survey, yep, I see Carson said yes, so thanks, Carson. Understand what you're trying to learn. So, you know, try and really understand what questions you're trying to answer before you get started building the survey. Like we talked about, kind of avoid biased questions. So kind of like an example of what Matt said, like how good of a job are we doing? Like avoid questions that are like that. And then a few options for survey questions. You can do multiple choice, which would be like frequently, always, never would be a good example of that. Open-ended questions, you can do long or short answer. Agree, disagree style questions. And then ranking, where you can rank different, you can do ranking in a couple of different ways. One of the ways that you can do it is like, you know, saying like someone, like how much do you agree on or disagree with something on a scale of 1 to 5 would be an example of a ranking style question. Or you could also have it so that you have a list of different phrases and are asking people to rank like on a scale of importance, how important they think that something is. So collecting responses. What are some ways to collect responses on a survey? We've talked about a couple of them.
You could share them on social media. You could so links to online surveys. You can email people. I've gotten emails for surveys before. Or you can just simply go out, you know, word of mouth and say, hey, do you want to take a survey? That's all. Those are there's many ways you can get surveys.
Perfect. Great job, Allison. Allison, that's awesome. So just a couple of examples: social media, getting out in person, email. Those are just a couple of different options for collecting responses on a survey. And then we're going to talk a little bit about analyzing results. So, you know, tools like SurveyMonkey and Google Forms are nice because they already have analysis like tools kind of towards the end of the survey. Like Google Forms, I don't know if you guys have seen the ending of a Google form before, but you can look at responses and generally they'll even like make charts for you and like make it really, really easy to look at. Open-ended responses are going to be harder to analyze. We're not going to try and like steer you guys away from asking open-ended questions because they can be really rich and they can be really helpful, but they are, you know, harder to do, especially when you're looking at, you know, 50 something responses and they're all have open-ended responses. That might be a little bit more challenging to look at. Challenging does not mean impossible though. So ask questions when you're analyzing, you know, results. You want to ask questions like what stands out? What are the patterns? What are the similarities? What are the differences? And is more information needed? So these are, you know, good questions to kind of get you rolling on your analysis and get started on that. And then, you know, we want to ask the question, what do you want to know? Like what interests you about your community? Like what questions do you feel like need answered? And kind of where do you want to go from here? So next we're going to break out into small groups and read through and talk about the outcomes of interest, which I'm going to copy and paste those outcomes of interest into the chats so that we all have that. And then we're going to talk about which of these outcomes are interesting to you and which don't seem as important to you. And then as a group, if we could pick 3 outcomes that you would be interested in evaluating and be prepared to share the outcomes when we come back together.
And one thing I wanted to throw out to everybody just real quickly before we break into groups is we've all talked about like the downstream versus upstream, you know, strategies. And when we're working downstream on substance abuse, we're like actively pulling people out of the river, helping connect them to recovery services, it's really easy to know how effective you are. When you're working upstream and you're trying to prevent people from falling into that metaphorical river of substance abuse, it's more challenging to know if you're being effective. And so kind of the big picture why behind all of this is we're trying to gauge the effectiveness of our program at preventing substance abuse and increasing the protective factors that we're working on. And so I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up of like why all of this matters, in case you're curious. So Jordan, with the breakout groups, do you want me to just kind of assign it randomly, or?
You can totally assign it randomly. Sylvia and I probably don't need to be in a breakout group, but everyone else can be in a breakout group. It looks like we'll do a group of 3 and a group of 2. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Yeah, before we go into breakout groups, I just wanted to pause and ask, Jordan, do you mind sharing those outcomes really quick?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull that up again.
Thanks.
All right, here we go.
I just wanted to pause and ask, do you guys have any questions about what these mean or what they're connected to?
And you guys may want to take a picture of that just to make sure you have it in your breakout group, because we had some trouble last time actually having stuff in there.
Oh yeah, and we can drop the link.
Oh, let's go ahead and drop the link to the presentation in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And that way we make sure that everybody has that pulled up. My light in my office automatically turns off sometimes.
I always see Jordan waving.
I'm always like waving and trying to get it to turn on. There we go. Okay. Let me go ahead and put the link in the chat.
Does everybody understand what we're asking you to do? Speak.
I'm seeing Athena
Yes.
nodding.
Okay. And does anybody not understand what we're asking you to do? Okay. You were given a chance. So.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. I'm going to break everybody up then.
And you guys have quite a while to chat about this, so feel free to really sink in to the conversation. Get deep.
See you all soon.